Hey guys, I get a lot of questions about how do I put the logo on my projects, especially with the foil. So I get that question a lot. I figured I would answer. So behind me I've got this small heat imprinter. It's the WT90AS. It's pretty cheap. I've had to do some things to make it work. You can easily go spend $1,500 on a heat imprinter. I didn't want to, so I figured out how to make it work, and I want to share some of that with you because there are a lot of subtleties in how we use this thing. So I've got a couple of examples right here that we'll go a little bit deeper into. Depending on the foil, the pressure you use, the type of leather you're using, it all changes how these things take. So it's kind of hard to see. I don't know how well it'll show up, but you've got, silver foil on this pull-up leather. Yeah, it's not going to focus. It takes really well. You got to do it a lot shorter as far as the press needs to be real short. The copper foil here, you have to give it a little more pressure and hold it a little bit longer. And then depending, again, like I said, on the type of foil, you may get, again, it's gonna be really hard to see, but there's a bunch of foil that's left behind, and even though it's blurry, you can see it's not a clear outline like it is on this. And I will show you how to fix that here in a second. So I'm gonna flip around and we'll talk about how I have this heat imprinter set up, what I had to do to make it work for me, what my settings are, and things like that. Like I said, what we have here is the TW90AS. I got this on Amazon. It's a pretty cheap model, but it does pretty much everything I need it to if I have the patience. I leave it set to 120 degrees. I don't ever change that. I've never found a need to, and it took a while of trial and error to find this temperature. It works really well for me. It's easy to set. All you would do is go to set, and then you can change your volume or your temperature up or down, and then you just got to wait for it to heat or cool to that temperature. The plate is what gets hot. I have my custom die made. I can't take it out now because it's the whole plate's hot, but basically what you have is your custom brass logo or whatever you're using, lettering. The screw comes up through, bolts down, and it just conducts heat through that. This bed for me wasn't level, so I had to do a few things. You can see here that there's a piece of paper taped down, folded in half. That was literally the difference between a good print and a print that wasn't level, wasn't imprinting correctly. So I got a little finicky trying to get it perfect, but now it works great. The other thing you can see here is a jig that I made. So I figured out what I wanted the actual offset to be, and if I'm making things over and over, I want to be able to consistently replicate where that's going. So if I take my piece of leather, I slide it in, now I've got a good location every time. The foils come in a bunch of different colors. They're pretty cheap. I've actually found that the Tandy brand of the foil works the best. I've tried several other kinds from different vendors. That's the one that I use the most. Now let's talk about doing pressure. So I'll move this in a little bit closer and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, we have a scrap piece here. I switched back to copper because it's going to be a little bit easier to see. I'll just toss that in here, line it up. You have a bar right here that keeps the foil from touching the plate. And this goes pretty quick. You're putting a decent amount of pressure. You're not going crazy, but you need to make sure that it imprints. So it's gonna go pretty quick. Usually hold it back down with my hand. And that's it. Now if you press too long, it'll leave some of the transfer, a little too much of the transfer behind. Then what you would have to do, particularly for me, like in the eyes, and it'll fill in more of the lettering. You'll just go back with a piece of canvas and you can clean it right off. Now I showed you one that had an issue with the foil over imprinting and leaving stuff behind. So you can see how much of it's left on the surface. This is real easy. All you do is hit it with the canvas for a second, and that pretty much cleans it all up. It's a really cool tool. The foil doesn't ever seem to come off. I like using it. It adds a nice aesthetic. And one other thing I had forgotten to mention is, as part of this little jig setup that I have, I just have this little skinny piece, and that'll go right in along the side, and that way I can lower my stamp and make sure that it's squared up. All right, just a quick little video. Hope that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll see you next time.